They say your life flashes before your eyes. Liars. When you're diving into a living nuclear reactor, you see one thing. Blue light. And teeth the size of a skyscraper. To understand this, we have to go back to the day the world still made sense. Oakland Harbor. Fog, salt, and ozone. I found it among the rusted steel. An orange, pulsating thing. It stung like a live wire, but it felt like a heartbeat. I ran before the feds could lock it down. I didn't know if it was a bomb or a miracle, but when the shell turned blood red, I knew. He didn't hatch. He exploded. Neon slime and a hiss that crawled down my spine. He didn't want love. He wanted blood. From that second, we were a pack. Living with an apex predator in a tiny studio apartment? Not my smartest move. By the third week, my leather sofa was just a pile of shredded stuffing and expensive regret. Turuk doesn't just inhabit a space, he conquers it. He learned to mimic the pattern of my curtains, blending into the shadows for the perfect jump scare. I spent my entire rent budget on prime rib just to keep my fingers attached. He wasn't a pet. He was a beautiful orange disaster in a world of drywall. But when he splintered the door frame trying to reach the balcony, I saw it in his eyes. Claustrophobia. My world was getting too small for him, and a king shouldn't live in a cage. Moving a dragon in a freight elevator? That's how you lose a security deposit and a limb. But when we hit the roof and he finally saw the sky, 8 meters of orange wings snapped open, catching the cold San Francisco wind. We turned that skyscraper into our private kingdom. I spent my nights scrubbing his heavy scales with industrial brushes, watching the old skin flake off like dead stars. Training was a brutal dance of bruises and broken drones. He'd swat a Starlink satellite out of the air just to bring it to my feet like a smoking trophy. We learned each other's rhythm, sharing water and silence under the open moon. He wasn't looking at the streets anymore. He was measuring the clouds. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. I strapped those leather cinch belts tight, whispering a prayer to a god I hadn't spoken to in years. We stood on the edge of a 100-story cliff made of glass and steel. Then, we just stepped off. 5 seconds of pure, agonizing silence as the pavement rushed toward us at 100 miles an hour. Then, crack. The lift was so violent the world went blurry. We weren't just flying, we were rewriting the laws of gravity between the mirrored towers of the financial district. We chased the sun until the air got thin and the clouds turned to gold. Looking down at the tiny cars below, I realized the world didn't belong to them anymore. It belonged to our shadow. Then the city went dead. It's a sound you never forget, the absence of noise. No birds, no sirens, just a low-frequency hum that made my marrow vibrate. Turuk knew before I did. He stood on the edge of the skyscraper for 24 hours straight, his crest turning a bruised obsidian black. Down in the bay, the water started boiling, a sickly, radioactive blue glowing under the fog. On the shore, deep-sea monsters were washing up like trash. Then came the ripple in my glass of water. Thud, thud. Nature was screaming at us to run for the mountains, but Turuk wouldn't budge. He wasn't scared. He was preparing. He looked at me one last time, and I saw it in his eyes. A goodbye. He didn't just rise from the water, he shattered the horizon. Godzilla, a mountain of prehistoric spite and nuclear fire. The first time he roared, every window in our penthouse turned to dust. The shockwave hit my chest like a physical punch. I watched from the roof as the skyscraper next door began to tilt. 1 billion tons of concrete and glass falling toward us in slow motion. Turuk didn't wait for a command. He snatched me by the collar and cleared the roof just as the floor dissolved beneath us. Above the burning ruins of the city, the atomic breath sliced the sky into steam. I snapped my helmet shut, shouting into the wind, "Distract him!" And Turuk folded his wings into a lethal, screaming dive. We were flying in centimeters of his scales, and the air tasted like ozone and charred meat. Turuk buried his talons into the raw, pulsing skin beneath the lizard's jaw. We rolled over his shoulder just as a mountain-sized claw swept the sky where we'd been a second ago. I fired every magnesium flare I had straight into that massive golden eye. The blinding flash sent him into a nuclear rage. One swing of his tail wiped out 3 city blocks in a heartbeat. We dived between his legs as he buckled to his knees, his dorsal spikes humming with a blue, lethal heat that nearly cooked us alive. Then I saw it. A jagged tear across Turuk's wing. Orange blood sprayed across my visor. We hit the parking garage hard, and for the first time, he sounded tired. Godzilla was heading straight for the stadium. Thousands of people trapped like cattle in a pen. I didn't think. I just grabbed the adrenaline spike from the kit and slammed it into Turuk's neck. Ugh! He let out a jagged electric shriek and surged back into the radioactive storm. This was it, the high-pitched mechanical whine of the end. We dove headfirst into that living nuclear reactor, right into the blue light and the teeth the size of skyscrapers. At the last second, Turuk unleashed every drop of venom straight into the Titan's glowing throat. The explosion of energy forced Godzilla to choke on his own atomic fire. As his massive body collapsed back into the bay, the world went silent. Only the sound of the fires remained. We hit the twisted wreckage of the bridge with a bone-jarring thud. Strained gasp. Turuk collapsed on his side, his breath coming in ragged, wet rattles. Pitying my hands were a mess of blisters as I struggled to unbuckle the melted leather of his saddle. Wincing, I found some clean water to wash the radioactive soot from his scales, and for the first time, he let out a soft, broken whimper, softly. When the rescue choppers buzzed overhead, the soldiers didn't fire. Surprised, they just lowered their rifles, watching the dragon that had saved their city. Awed, we retreated to a hollowed-out hangar in the redwoods, far from the sirens. Exhausted, as I bandaged his torn wing with scraps of heavy canvas, he leaned his massive head against my chest. Fondly, the world was mourning, but we were breathing, determined, and beneath the golden glow of his crest, we finally slept. Whisper. 2 months have passed, and the city is buried under a skeleton of scaffolding and hope. We found a new roof. Not quite as high as the last one, but it's quiet. I spend my mornings scrubbing his massive teeth with a brush the size of a broom, watching him squint his eyes in pure reptilian bliss. We share a single tin of tuna on the edge of the ledge, his movements careful, almost delicate now. He stretches that scarred, jagged wing toward the Pacific, the sunlight catching the gold in his crest. I got a pet. He's a king. And kings, they protect their subjects. But as the sun dips below the horizon, a low, familiar vibration ripples through the bay. Turuk opens one eye.